as somebody who's obviously well versed on the history of civil rights and also the president of a chapter of the NAACP, does it weigh heavy on you the way that civil rights movements have been treated in the past or been handled in the past by the government, especially with, like Operation Paperclip from the start, or with, just the way Fred Hampton was murdered laying in bed after doing exactly everything that you take the most, I don't want to say racist, but the most hating person of the civil rights movement who thinks, oh, well, we already have equality and this and that. Right. And what are black people screaming about in front of the police station for? Because they already have equal rights. You know what I mean? Or they bring up statistics and they say white people are going to be killed by police too, and whatever the case may be. But it leaves out the history of an organized effort by the FBI, by the city of Chicago, by the United States government to suppress the civil rights movement and to controversialize their leaders and to murder anybody who rises above the controversializing.
Absolutely. I think and that's why I think we have to speak truth. I think we have to speak truth and truly understand the historical context. People say, man, I don't want you to talk about slavery, but yet you want to talk about, the things that benefit you or something else. And I think that that's a great point, because when you talk about the, Black Panther Party, you think about this. Now, the Black Panther Party said, hey, they found out that we can carry, guns. Mm-hmm. So we're going to protest. We're going to go to the Capitol, and we're going to, try to get our voices heard.
Yep.
And guess what? A gun.
Exactly. And that is the anybody who has a problem with the Black Panthers and their stance on gun cannot have any type of positive look on the Second Amendment then, because that is exactly what the point is, to protect you from the government, to be able to have your voice heard. That's the entire point of guns in this country. Point.
Yes. But yet people who support the Second Amendment would totally speak out against the Black Panther Party.
Right.
And you just, think about that hypocrisy. Mm-hmm. At its best. And so, I believe that the civil rights has been pushed by our government. And I think it's important, that, and that's why it's so important to vote. To vote, not just vote, but be an educated voter, so that you truly can get someone in there to speak for you and vote. One of the best books that I've ever read was What's the Matter with Kansas? And if you've never read it, man, take an opportunity to read that, because it really talks about, and again, and I'm a nonpartisan, but it talks about how the Republican Party in Kansas, basically pushed this agenda. And so everybody voted, Republican.
What time period are we looking at?
This was just probably back in the 80s, 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
90s. I was thinking you're going back to John Brown when they were trying to keep
I'm talking about
slavery in Kansas.
Recent. And what ended up happening was, and this was, probably I would say 10 years ago, that they realized that, man, wait a minute, some of these, this legislation has gone against, just the fundamentals of life. And so they had to, you talk about a fight against that. They recalled their governor because they were like, whoa, wait a minute. This is, we've pushed ourselves into a hole, all because of, the policies that we voted for. And it's not to say that some of the Republican policies were wrong, and I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that when you just say, you know what, I'm just going to go a party just because one or two issues is what I stand for, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. Whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, that shouldn't just be the main issue that you vote on, because saying that you're pro-life may go against something else. Saying that you're pro-choice may go against something else. Right. So you can't say, if you're Second Amendment, constitutionalist, guess what? Being a constitutionalist, I think, is a great thing. But, if you say, well, I'm for, gun control, well, that may go against something else.
Yeah.
I want my guns. Well, that may go against. So you really have to, try to find. And I think that, when you think back to earlier days, I think Washington and Adams had it right when they said, whoever gets the most votes win the presidency, and whoever's second, it didn't matter what party, because there was some balance there. When you think
George
about
Washington said that the two-party system would be the death of America.
Exactly. So guess what?
Look at us now.
Look at us now. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I just think that it's just, it's crazy, but we have to really take a look at those things and try to understand that the government, and I'm not, against the government because you know I know it's easy to be pro government, pro whatever, but
I'm not their biggest fan, so it's all right.
Because I do think that there are some things that we need. I think Biden just initiated an immigration overhaul or whatever, and so when you think about immigration, think about that. Immigration. What is it? When we talk about immigration, people immediately think about illegal immigration. They don't think about the whole grasp and the whole span of immigration.
I was just talking about this yesterday, that we have a big problem with the short-sightedness of America. They say in Europe, 100 miles is a long distance, and America, 100 years is a long time, right? But we are all so recently immigrant. Like, I always use it to just basically justify my work, working, right? Is like, I always say, all of us are from immigrants, basically, unless you're Native American, right? You're from an immigrant. So why? Because I get really tired of a sense of entitlement, where people are like, I am owed this because I'm an American, right? Because all of our grandpa or great grandpas and great grandmas got on boats or maybe on planes if they're a little bit more recent and said, I'm going to leave behind everything I know, everything that I love, and I'm going to go to an entirely new place to work for the rest of my life to hopefully give my kids a little bit better life.
Exactly.
And we all lose. And then the idea that people think, I just have a problem with even the label of immigrant. Right. Where people are like, oh, those are immigrants. It's like, no. All of us. None of us are from here. So why is it just grosses me out that we can't go.
Absolutely.
Oh, so we have, the most recent influxes of immigrants in America or in Sioux City are the Mexican, Asian, and African communities, right? Whereas to label that as any different than somebody who's lived here for a generation is just strange to me.
Absolutely. I had a young man who said, I host every once in a while just conversations. Let's have a real conversation. And we keep the media away just so that we can have a real conversation where a person can ask me a real question and I give them a real answer. And a guy said to me, he said, my issue is that, I worked for IBP for a number of years and then they let those people come over here and I was like, okay. So, he says, I just don't understand why they would come and work for, $10 less than, what we were working. And, and I said, well, tell me this. I mean, why do you blame them?
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, so did they decide what they were going to be paid? Or did the person who hired you decide what was going to be paid? Mm-hmm. And he was like, well, but they accepted it. I'm like, but did they know any different?
Yeah.
I mean,
and what was the slave or what was the wages that they were coming from?
Exactly. Right. And that's the key is that if they're working for $5 over there and they're coming over, just like you said, I want to make a better life for my family and give my children just a little bit more than what I had, then why would anyone be upset with that?
Right.
Now, granted, I know people are against unions and but maybe if you would have said to this person, hey, there's a union because this is what we're doing, then maybe, but don't be upset of a person who just wants a better life, who's willing to come and work hard.
Because that's the most American thing that you can talk about.
Exactly.
That is the fundamental concept of America is the ability to work for a better life.
That's it. Right. And that's all if you go and ask anyone who has come from somewhere else, why did you come to America? I just want, I just want a better life. Mm-hmm. I don't want, the government telling me that they're going to kill me or, I want to have some freedoms. I want to be able to speak, and again, vote. I can vote for this person and not feel like it's going to, haunt me, and really understand that life is, when I was in school, we had a kid who came over from, I think, somewhere in Europe, and we took him to the demolition derby, and he was so upset. And he said, man, you guys in America, you wreck cars that we would use these cars to go to work, to go to school, to go to, and I mean, like, wow. Never thought about it like that,
Right.
I mean, because it's not a car that anybody would use, but would they? I mean, because we dismiss the inner city, we dismiss urban, because we put people, whether it's a reservation one day or if it's the urban, of the projects the next, we put people in these places and then we forget about them and say, well, they'll just be okay. But in reality, no, it's not. It's really not.
And people who have a anti-immigrant sentiment, unless you're British or maybe Dutch, name one thing that you can criticize a recent immigrant group about that they didn't say about your Irish great grandpa. That they didn't say about your German great grandpa. You know, look at like the way that Benjamin Franklin talked about the Germans and the Germans and the Irish is no different than the way that Steve King talks about Mexicans.
Exactly.